Hello and welcome to People and Profit, your essential business briefing. I'm Kate Moody. Coming up, European lawmakers push ahead with a controversial overhaul of copyright laws, which could change the way you use the internet. Apple is taking a bite out of the juicy world of video streaming, so how will it fare in a crowded market? And a blue economy may be green, but it's a red flag for fishermen in the Seychelles Islands. First up, it could change the internet forever. The European Parliament has approved a sweeping overhaul of copyright rules, which affect online content from news articles to music to memes. The debate has largely pitted creators against tech companies and prompted months of protests and lobbying on both sides. Anke Uhle has been looking at what could change.
The EU copyright directive has been making waves across the bloc. Two articles have caused a stir. First is Article 17, formerly known as Article 13. It's often referred to as the upload filter, because it would require platforms to check all content before it's uploaded and filter out copyrighted material. Many artists and content creators say this provision protects their work.
It will allow artists to continue to create the music loved by fans all over the world by ensuring that the digital services that generate vast profits from music can no longer claim to have no responsibility for the content their businesses depend on.
But Google warned it could prompt online platforms to overblock content to avoid fines. And free internet activists say it would lead to censorship.
We need the right to remix. It must be legal to combine videos, sound bites, and text in a creative way to make collages, which we should be able to share. That's part of the culture in the 21st century.
Article 15, previously called Article 11, requires online platforms like Google and Facebook to pay media companies when linking to their content. It's often referred to as a link tax. This article has been hailed by traditional media outlets as a crucial source of revenue. But opponents say it would limit the free flow of information and could drive smaller websites out of business.
Now for more, we're joined by João Pedro Quintais, specialist in information law at the University of Amsterdam. Thanks for joining us on People and Profit. Now, you're one of more than 200 academics who signed a letter against these overall changes, but in particular, this provision that requires online platforms to filter content before they publish it. Why is that so controversial?
Thank you for having me. Well, I think the main problem with this provision is, one, that it's extremely complex. Second, that it fundamentally changes the way the law is right now, basically by making these platforms liable as if they were users of content. And it's a solution that was pushed for mostly by the music industry, but now applies to a broad range of platforms. That means that in 28 member states, soon to be 27, unfortunately, what we're going to have is 27 different sets of implementations of this law in about 2 years. That will translate into a lot of complexity, barriers to entry for smaller platforms. And some people say, and I have to say, after analyzing this, reach the same conclusion, somewhat entrench these big American platforms that some of the legislators were trying to pursue or target with this new regime.
Shouldn't online platforms have some kind of responsibility for what's published on their sites? How would you suggest that they go about doing that, if not with this article?
Well, I think, for one, this article only applies to copyright. There's right now a broad range of measures on tackling illegal content online, on topics that I would say perhaps are more relevant, like disinformation, hate speech, terrorist content. And for copyright, what we have devised is a very strict set of measures and very complicated set of measures to try to solve problems of remuneration that are mostly the province of one sector, the music sector. And for platforms, aimed at platforms, at least the standard bearer, the target standard bearer was YouTube, that actually can already comply with such measures. So it adds a whole layer of requirements on other platforms, which I personally don't think will solve much of the problems that it's aiming at.
Now, a lot of members of the public have latched on to this idea that memes or small pieces of usually famous copyrighted material could now be cracked down on. There is, however, a provision, an exemption for material that's uploaded for the purpose of caricature or parody. Surely that leaves open a lot to interpretation.
Well, I think this is a good point, and I think this is one of the main problems. So the provision very simply creates a structure where it says, on the one hand, you have to try to license everything that's uploaded by users. For the most part, that will be impossible. So alternative option 2, or the alternative is to more or less filter content, to put it in simple terms. And then the provision tries to safeguard, to have mitigation measures for users by saying, well, but for certain exceptions like caricature, parody, pastiche, these filtering measures, these filters should recognize them and allow these exceptions of users to be exercised. But the fact is, there is no content recognition technology that can take care or accommodate the context of a parody or the dynamic interpretation of the course. So the result that you're going to have is where a meme that contains some sort of caricature, quotation, parody, pastiche is captured by a filter. The filter in most cases won't be able to recognize that, so it will block the content, and there's no good way to solve this. As a colleague of mine says, the machine has no sense of humor, and from what I've talked with computer scientists, it's not an easy problem to solve, and it won't be an easy problem to solve in the foreseeable future. So to answer your question, I don't think the safeguards in the directive will properly solve this problem.
The European Union is leading the way in this. Are other countries likely to follow suit, and how do you think that they should do so? How do you think they should tackle these issues?
Well, I think most countries are concerned about further responsibilization of platforms and thinking of measures to do so. In the specific copyright field, of course, Europe and the US are leading forces. I would say I don't think we'll have the export effect we had with the GDPR, but it's quite likely that other countries will look at this and that interest groups will push for this.
João Pedro Quintais, thanks so much for joining us from the University of Amsterdam. Next, it was a long-awaited and star-studded announcement. Apple made a move away from its core business of phones and gadgets to a new focus on services like video streaming. Apple TV Plus will provide both original content and films or TV shows from other studios. Subscription-based entertainment is a fast-growing industry, spearheaded by the likes of Netflix and Amazon. But the entry of the world's largest company could shake up the race.
I've never seen this much star power in one place at a tech event. So that was a first. I don't think that people will jump just to Apple and kill Netflix. I think that Netflix will still be valuable as they invest in more content, etc. But I do think that Apple has one big advantage in that they have 1 billion iOS devices and over 300 to 400 million Mac users.
So what's the state of the industry that Apple is diving into? Brian Quinn's been finding out. Brian.
Well, Kate, the market for video streaming on demand is huge and growing. There are some 300 streaming services available, and many customers use more than one. As of 2018, there were an estimated 613 million online video subscriptions worldwide. King of the hill is Netflix, with 139 million paying subscribers around the world. Amazon could have as many as 100 million through its Prime service, though actual viewership is likely lower. Hulu has around 25 million. Soon to join the fray, Disney, the world's largest entertainment company, whose purchase of 21st Century Fox positions it to take on Netflix when it launches Disney Plus later this year. HBO parent company Warner Media and NBC Universal are also planning to unveil streaming platforms in 2019. For now, cable TV still outweighs streaming in revenue terms by a strong margin. It brought in $118 billion in 2018, a $6.2 billion increase over the previous year. Streaming, by contrast, brought in just under $40 billion. But the trend is hard to ignore. By the end of 2018, more people paid for a streaming video subscription service than for cable TV. Cable subscribers declined by 2% last year, while streaming saw a 27% increase. Apple plans to spend $1 billion in original content for 2019, just a fraction of Netflix's budget. It's counting on its built-in customer base of 1.4 billion iPhone and Mac users to help it bundle other studios' content for delivery. But Netflix's refusal to participate is a reminder that competition is heating up in the streaming sphere, and the fight over the future of media is just getting started.
Brian, a lot to keep an eye on there. Thank you. Next, the island nation of the Seychelles is pushing ahead with plans to develop a blue economy. That's a Commonwealth commitment to sustainable use of ocean resources. But independent fishermen in the Indian Ocean country say the Blue Charter imposes too many restrictions on them. Catherine Clifford has more.
Not a single catch today for local fisherman Malik, a far cry from the bountiful haul of his earlier career.
When I first started fishing, we usually come to port with 1,000 kilograms of fish, sometimes 1.5 as well. But nowadays it's very difficult to get 1,000 kilograms.
Malik no longer has the freedom to fish where he wants to. In February last year, the Seychelles government signed a bill naming nearly a third of its seas as protected areas and banning fishing altogether in more than 200,000 square kilometres of its waters. With little land territory but a wide economic zone in its seas, the Indian Ocean nation is looking to maximise on its geography by pursuing a blue economy. A programme which the IMF says is a positive step for the island's economic development. But many local fishermen fear further quotas and restrictions could come as the final blow to their struggling trade and say their voices aren't being heard.
I fear this will be a dying industry in Seychelles. If the same trend continues, I mean, we're no longer attracting youths, we're no longer attracting professionals, so I feel we are being condemned to fail, to make way for others, to make way for fish farmers, to make way for fish ponds, to make way for aquaculture.
The fisheries sector is the country's second industry after tourism, and traditional fishing employs some 17% of the population. While the blue economy is aimed at making essential resources more sustainable in the long run, there could be rough seas ahead as the country transitions into this new balance.
Well, that's all for now, but you can find the best of our business coverage on our Facebook page, France 24 Business, or you can tweet me with your questions at Kate A. Moody. Until next time, thanks for watching.
En France 24 nos esforzamos por brindar la mejor información hecha por periodistas de Latinoamérica y del resto del mundo.
We look at how technology is shaping the future, and we show you the latest gadgets you can soon get your hands on.
نقدم لكم الاقتصاد بطريقة مختلفة، نبسط المفاهيم والمصطلحات كي تكتمل الصورة لديكم.
Aquí puedo hablar de medio ambiente, no solo de los problemas que afectan a nuestro planeta, sino también de iniciativas y soluciones que a veces no tienen espacio en televisión.
La différence sur France 24, c'est l'idée du reportage. Nos grands reportages, vous ne les verrez nulle part ailleurs.